Hello again, it's Kate Brown Pernia for Why Not a Hat? Today I'm going to show you how to make a foundation for a hat, and we're going to do what I call a bandeau. We're sort of sticking with the vintage theme a little bit this week. A bandeau is like a wide headband, like the one I'm wearing now. Give you a little peek at it. It's a fun beginner piece with an easy frame. I'm going to show you how to block it in buckram, how to wire it, and set it up for covering in whatever fabric you like. But before we do that, let me show you a few variations on the theme. Now this one is not my best hat shape because I have a narrow face and a very high forehead. So the bandeau doesn't do much for me. I look better in a brimmed hat like the one you see in the background. However, if you've got a nice short hairdo or curly hair, this is a great little starter hat for you. So here is a little denim piece where I've done some patchwork on it and a little sashiko embroidery just for the fun of trying it out, and a little piece of ribbon. Here is a fancier one. This one is made with silk velvet, and I ruched, see if you can tell from the light here, it's kind of hard to see. And I had a fancy feather trim that somebody gave me, so it's more of an elegant evening hat. Now this one is a lot of fun. This hat is a vintage brocade from like the 1960s or so, but the trim, I found a sweater at Macy's that had this kind of ribbon trim on it, and I thought it was so interesting I wanted to try it on a hat. Let me see if I can do better justice with the light. Can you see it? It's just folded ribbon with French knots holding it in place. And then the last piece is something that's very chic again. It comes back every few years, which is a faux leopard. Everybody seems to love this stuff, and it's great for the fall. So that's what we're going to do today. And let me show you how we can get started and make the frame that will make the hat. So let me put this away. I'm going to focus the camera on my head block here. Now these head blocks are made out of wood. When I was in millinery school, that was the first piece of equipment we were required to have for millinery classes. Now they're expensive. They're in the range of $100. So you can actually, for this particular project, maybe use a substitute, which I'll show you in a minute. But let me show you what blocking is. This is shaping with steam. I'm going to turn on my little steamer. I have this great little Boucherol handheld garment steamer. And what's wonderful about this is that it has a little bit of water, just enough for the project at hand, but it'll sit on my work table for me. And it doesn't take up as much space as my expensive Jiffy steamer, which is a much bigger piece. But it speeds up the process because it heats up in just 30 seconds. You'll see in just a minute. So what we're going to do is take this piece of buckram. Now buckram, I think I mentioned this before, buckram is a cotton fabric that's woven very loosely, and then it's heavily sized or stiffened with starch, which makes it a good crisp material to make a hat form out of. Now, it's woven, so there's only so much stretch you can get out of it. But if you cut it on the bias, like I've done here, remember we said the other day, warp and weft, and then you cut it diagonally, you get a bias so that you get a little bit of stretch. So I'm going to show you how that works. Let's see, we've got some steam going here. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to steam my buckram. You want it damp but not too wet. You could soak this in water to do this project, but then it would take a lot longer for it to dry. So I'm going to show you how we do this. We just pull it over the head, and you see how it's beginning to take the form? Use that steam to help me. And I have some push pins here, 5/8 inch push pins that will push right into my wooden block to hold it in place. Now I'm going to steam a little bit more to smooth down those edges. Nice. See how that works? Now I'm going to turn off my steamer. Put that away. Now we're going to give this a few minutes for it to dry, and I'm going to show you the pattern that I made for this hat. This is a piece of paper. It's 3 inches across, and it's 12¼ inches from point to point. So you can just draw an oblong and then just round off the corners to make yourself a pattern. It's, again, 3 inches by 12¼ inches. So now I'm going to place this pattern on top of my blocked buckram and just pin it with a straight pin. Now, if you don't have a head block, you could probably try this project with one of these styrofoam heads that you can get in the craft store for about $6 or $7. They won't hold up for very long, but to do 1 or 2 of these bandeaus, you could get that curve that you need by stretching over this. And since it's styrofoam, you can also punch your push pins or straight pins into it. So I just wanted to show you that in case you don't have the equipment. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our pencil. I'm going to put 2 more pins in here just to hold the pattern in place. Now it won't lie flat because it's on a piece of buckram that is curved, but that's all right. We'll still get the lines. I'm going to take my pencil and just trace around the pattern like this. You can buy hat forms, but it's better if you learn how to make your own, because then the possibilities are endless. We'll get into some more complicated ones later on, but this is a good starter hat, or bandeau, as I said. Almost finished tracing here. There. Now, it's dry enough so we can take off the push pins. You'll notice I covered my block with plastic wrap so that the buckram wouldn't stick to the wood. But see, there we've got a nice curved piece. I'm going to move this out of the way. Now you don't want to use your best sewing scissors to cut buckram because it's a rough material and it'll be hard on your scissors. So I'm using my paper scissors and I'm just cutting around the edge of that pattern I just drew on my buckram like this. Sometimes it's a little tricky to see because it's a woven. It's a loosely woven thing and it's almost sheer. See, so you already have a little bit of a hat band, but it's kind of soft and it's not going to stay on your head yet. So let's get busy. I started one earlier so we could save some time. We're going to now wire this. Let me flip this up a little bit better. What we're going to do now is attach a piece of millinery wire to the edges of the bandeau. Now, millinery wire you have to get from a millinery supplier like Judith M. or Hat Supply, or there are any number of places that sell this. It's a regular wire, but it's covered with a thread. So what we're going to do is try to get this wire right at the very edge of the buckram. Now I've already started by bending a little thing for the corner there just to help us get started. So what we're going to use is some heavy white thread. I like to use silamide, which I get online. It's a good hand stitching thread, and it's very strong. You want a good needle with a, and I always like to start, because buckram is such an open weave, you can't really knot your thread. You need to start it with a knot, like a square knot. Otherwise, if you knotted the thread, it would just pull through the weave. So let's right over left. I can get my arthritic fingers to work. And left over right. Now this number 19 wire, you're going to cut just enough to go around the edges of this, plus an inch to overlap. And I use these little clothespins just to help keep the wire where I need it. Get rid of all of that. Now what I'm going to use here is what's called a buttonhole stitch, or a blanket stitch. And the way it works, I'm going to cut the tail off here. I hold the thread down with my thumb, and I come in from the other side, about a ½ inch in, through the loop that the thread makes. And what it does is, it locks that stitch to hold the wire in place. Whoopsie, I don't need it to get the other piece of the wire. Try again. I hold it with my left thumb. I'm right-handed, so if you're left-handed, you'll have to do it the other direction. But you see I'm coming through about a ½ inch over, through the loop, and then I pull the thread, and you see how it locks? Again, hold it down. Let's get rid of this pin. Come through the loop. And ideally, you want this to sit right at the edge. If it's not perfect, don't worry, we're going to cover it. But anyway, you get the idea. And every, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches, I like to knot it off, just so that if by any chance you should break your thread, you won't lose the whole project. The way I knot it off is I just make another stitch and go through the loop a second time, like that. Now we're going to go all the way around the hat and overlap at the end about 1 inch. Now I got another one started, so you don't have to watch me do that whole project. So let's pick up the one, if I can find it. Here we go. Here's one that I've already finished. Now once you get the wire on the hat, you're going to cover the wire with something that's called French elastic or crinoline bias. It's a 1 inch bias, and as you see again, bias, it has a little stretch to it. And what you're going to do is fold it over the wire edge and tug it just a little bit so that it stretches nicely. And then you're just going to baste it on with a running stitch like this. I got it started so that we wouldn't again have to watch me stitch for hours and hours. But you get the picture. But see how nice that looks? So if you make a few little mistakes on sewing the wire on, it won't really show. And I take a stitch about every ½ inch or yeah, little less than a ½ inch maybe. I keep getting tangled up in my hat. Now I've got a little more French elastic than I need. See, it comes in rolls like this. And you can also get that from Judith or from Hat Supply. I'm going to cut off some of this extra because we don't need all of that. And just again, like the wire, we're going to overlap just about an inch. And bind it off by going through the loop again. Oopsie. Okay. So there you have it. Your bandeau frame. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how to cover it with the fabric of your choice. So, why not a hat?